So abortions have been legal in Canada since 1988. If I remember correctly, Quebec was even more okay with abortions than were Canadians. Quebec. All right, funny story. I'll summarize the story, okay? There was this doctor in Quebec who performed abortions illegally. All right, let's look at this. This is a hilarious story, okay, of how Quebec is more progressive than the rest of Canada in many ways. You have here a man called Henry Morgentaler, who's dead, who died in 2013. He's Polish born. He died in Toronto, but he had his career in Quebec. So in 1969, and keep in mind, abortions were only made were made legal in Canada in 1988. He opened an abortion clinic in Montreal, completely illegally. On June 1st, 1970, Montreal City Police raided Morgentaler's clinic and laid several charges of performing illegal abortions. The first case did not come to trial until 1973. In the meantime, women's groups organized in support of Morgentaler, and he continued to perform abortions. In 1973, the doctor stated that he had performed 5,000 safe abortions outside hospitals, demonstrated that a hospital setting was not necessary. Between 1973 and 79, Morgentaler was tried 3 times in Montreal for defying the abortion law. Each time, he raised the defense of necessity, and each time he was acquitted. Each time, the jury took less time to reach their decision to acquit. At the third trial, they took 1 hour. This is called jury nullification, the refusal of juries to enforce law that they perceive to be unjust. And the thing is, they kept bringing him to court. The man was aborting left and right, illegally, and they kept bringing the man to court. In January 1976, a third trial was begun against Morgentaler on the first set of charges. On 18th September 1976, the trial ended up in an acquittal by a different jury. This was his third jury acquittal in Quebec. They realized that the abortion law could not be enforced if juries would not convict, so they dropped the remaining charges. Bédard, who was the Minister of Justice in Quebec, called the anti-abortion law unenforceable. From that point on, Quebec refused to enforce federal law prohibiting abortions by qualified medical personnel. Bédard emphasized that police would continue to identify and charge unqualified backstreet abortionists. Federal Justice Minister Ron Bassford said that Quebec had made a just and fair decision that was proper to the provincial authority. So basically, in Quebec, since the 70s, about a decade before abortions were legal, it was illegal, but they wouldn't enforce it because every time they had a jury, the jury would say, yeah, let that man do abortions. No one would oppose it. They couldn't find a jury that would oppose him. So all of that to say, there's a culture for several decades here that it's not a problem. They couldn't even find people to oppose this man who was doing illegal abortions back then. Okay? This dude freaking loves performing abortions. Yeah, 5,000. Yeah, he was straight up, yeah, I've done 5,000 of them. But keep in mind as well, there wasn't that many people to do it back then, right? So he might have been the only one, so he might have been just doing abortions. The contraceptive methods weren't as developed and widespread, and sex education just didn't exist. I'm assuming. Recreational abortions, I'm not true, but anyway, amazing story, amazing man. But that just goes to show how I've always taken abortions as granted. My parents were basically raised, even my parents themselves were raised in a world where abortions were legal, making it so it's not even the culture to not have abortions available. So it took me a couple of years to see or to realize how fucked up not having abortions or not giving access to abortions is. Because to me, it's just yeah, abortions, of course. I know women who've had abortions. I've known people who are not women who've had abortions as well. And Of course, it's never a fun experience. It's never an experience that, people are happy to have lived. It can be traumatic. It can be very emotionally draining. However, I've never heard of someone regretting having their abortion. That being said, when I went to a country and I lived in that country. I'm not going to name it. You might know, but I went in a country, and I met someone. I made a friend, and in any case, there's the whole topic of pregnancy scare, which I had never experienced. If you get pregnant here, yeah, it sucks, but there are ways in which you can abort, or you can circumvent that pregnancy. In that country that I went, abortions were illegal, and pregnancy scares are actually scary. It was the first time I actually had to deal with it, because not only now do you might have a child and you're forced to have that child, but you also have to live with and we've already talked a whole lot about how having children is draining socially, financially, and and all of that thing. I'm not going to reiterate on that, but also the stigma of being pregnant without wanting to, or from having slept with a friend or with someone that you don't plan on being with a very long time. And that's really, really scary. More so for the person who gets pregnant, or who is scared to become pregnant, but also for the person who made the other person pregnant. It's scary. It reduces your quality of life 100%. It makes it so that, and I'm talking about a perspective of someone who who can't be pregnant, because I want to explain how it also affects you. Even though you can't get pregnant, it also affects you. So first, you might have a child that you don't want. Second, when you have sexual intercourse, when you have sex, you get more scared of the ways in which contraception or contraceptives may fail. It's constantly in the back of your head. At least for me, because I was like, yeah, it's true. Like if you can't abort, like we're really, really, really fucked. Having sex with the peace of mind of like, yeah, if the contraceptive fails, which it may, contraceptives do fail. At the very least, we're not stuck with children we don't want. We're not stuck with the stigma of having, of bearing a child without having the stability to be able to bear a child. Thank you, Pyro Anarchist, for that great, always with the great contributions. So if you live in a country where it's kind of just a given, right, that you have abortions, you don't know how much of a blessing it is until it's taken away from you. It makes sex a lot more worrisome. It makes it so it can be punished. And I feel like a lot of conservatives, that's what they want. They want to punish you for having sex outside of marriage. They want to punish you for having sex, willy-nilly, just for the pleasure. It's a very Christian thing to want to punish people, for having sex for the sake of having sex for fun. I've had this argument from a conservative here. I've said like abortions are not much of an issue here, but there's still some dumb fucks here. Of course, there's some dumb fucks everywhere, and the dumb fuck was like, Oh, so you just want to have sex without the consequences? Yes. Yes, I do. Don't you? You only want to have sex to procreate? Idiot.